Hey guys, Palsteron here, and today let's talk about all the quality of life improvements that are coming for 3.24 Necropolis. Now, people have been asking why I haven't been uploading in the last 2 days. I usually talk about teasers, but in this case, a lot of them were so small that I wanted to tightly package them into one video. Obviously, when more stuff comes out, I will do so as well. Now, this video is especially important for people who are not on Twitter, not on Reddit, and also not following their Discord, right? Because they didn't actually post these on YouTube. Starting with the most recent one, which is quite interesting for juicers, one of the corruption outcomes of Val Orb on a map was that it gets unidentified. This is not the case anymore. You get stuff like increased item quantity. We also have pack size here, and also a little bit more freakier ones, like, for example, Val skills do not apply to soul gain prevention, similar to the Sexton. Now, I'm wondering if this is actually going to replace some of these Sextons, because they don't usually do these kind of overlaps on certain effects. One thing I wanted to say, though, is also this mod can actually brick your map. That is in very rare cases, though, but if you're already using Wandering Path, you already have increased effect of certain mods. This on top can be quite a big difficulty, especially if you're doing less recovery, because you can actually get to 100% less recovery with this mod on top. However, usually those builds are already immune to those stats, so yeah. The next one is a change you might not even catch on first watch, but now if you're using the Hoarder crafting station, you will always see what the item actually looks like, which saves you the wiggling between hovering over and going down to craft. Small change, pretty big deal still. The next one has the community quite split, which is the Veiled Orb rework. Ashling tier 4 will get completely reworked to now be a Veiled Orb. So now you drop these from Katarina. I think he shows this one as well. We do not know if this is a 100% drop chance. I mean, my first reaction would be probably not. However, how rare this is going to be and how the Betrayal rework will actually pan out will determine how expensive this actually is. People have told me that they think this is going to make it cheaper and more accessible. However, more accessible usually means that more people are going to use it as well. There's going to be more demand, as we saw with something like the Fracturing Orb, which was also predicted to be way cheaper than, for example, the Harvest Craft or anything before that. But it didn't pan out like that, and we're on extremely expensive grounds. That also has a lot to do with the mechanic that it comes from, Harbinger, how rare it is. So I'm just trying to say that just be careful predicting this. We don't know what the drop rates are. One big change, though, is that we're losing Veiled Orbs as they were. Now, if we look at what the biggest impact of this is, it's most likely, for me at least, rings. I know people say boots. Let's get to that in a second. But the biggest use case that I had was buy a good synthesis ring, finish the suffixes, and then the prefixes if you don't want to spend like 100 divines for them. All you really do is you Veiled Orb into life, and then you craft on minus mana. Or for example, let's say you're on a cast on crit build that doesn't use Mage Blood for some reason. Well, what you're gonna do is you're gonna go for probably reduced mana plus minus mana. Also same use case, right? You lock suffixes, you get 2 prefixes plus a random slam. Now you can still do that, just probably more expensive. So most of these use cases are still there. The other thing that people are talking about are early boots. I personally have not really used this. So if you look at the prefixes right here on boots, you could kind of force movement speed on force. Personally, I always thought this was a complete waste of currency. A lot of people have told me their first 2 divines usually go into this craft. I think that is absolute nonsense. On trade, if you want those boots, you can buy them for like 30, 40 chaos. You're probably going to lose the chance to avoid being chilled, something like this. Also, pro tip, if you are fine with going from 30% movement speed to 25, people are just completely like locked, stun locked on 30-35% movement speed on League Start. You can get like tier 1 suppression plus 2 Riz and maybe 25% movement speed for like 30-40 chaos. You would not believe the deals I'm usually getting, especially if you're shield charge or leap slam or welding blades, obviously still as well. Basically, unless you're a bow build, there's no way to focus that much on your boots. So I don't think it's going to be that big of a nerf, at least not as much as people make it out to be. Now, there are other use cases, for example, conversion gloves for whatever build, right? Whatever conversion you need. But I want you to realize these things are still there. It's just now going to be possibly more expensive. But thinking and ruminating about that is kind of useless until we actually know what the drop rate is. Next up, Flask Changes. These are quite significant, probably in terms of gameplay the most significant ones. We'll go over that in a second. But what happens here is you can now corrupt flasks to get either plus 10 up to minus 10 quality and anywhere in between. Now, they did also remove Hillock's Flask Craft, the 28% quality. However, I want to remind you, there's still drop flasks that can get up to 30 quality. Now, these might get insanely expensive now, or they remove them. I don't know what they want to go for here, but you can potentially, at least as we know right now, for example, get a 30 quality Jade Flask and then corrupt it to 40. Now, while this is probably straight up above for Magic Flasks, you can now potentially get higher in late game. It doesn't really matter on Mage Blood, first up. And the second part is you will get a lot less value out of your unique flasks, because unique flasks are not going to drop with 30 quality. The biggest offender here is probably Olrof's, where getting to higher quality will be kind of a pain. At least if you're ward stacking, that is quite a big deal. The next thing that people have pointed out is that the LE flasks are actually back to how they used to be. They don't give reduced damage taken anymore. They now give max res. And I'll be honest with you, I like this change quite a bit. I think the amount of defenses that some of these builds got in endgame, capping the res at 90 plus getting that reduced damage taken, was outrageous. Overall, this is about the same for most builds that use these kind of flasks normally, but actually starts becoming a buff if you are not capped at 90%, but you're somewhere in between 80 and 85%. There are charts out there if you're interested. Now, while this will nerf some of the top-end Valdos farmers by quite a bit, which I would say good riddance, this also opens up some stuff for example, Chieftain or Transcendence or Melding of the Flesh. So yeah, I personally think this is a good change, and I never understood why this got changed in the first place. Next up, a pretty minor change, but still, breach hands will now automatically be opened when you run over them. As you can see right here, this is the radius that we're looking at. And while I think this will be really comfortable, usually when you make something easier for everyday Joe, that means there's going to be more in the economy. So overall, I think that will be kind of a nerf to the rewards of breach. Overall, you will get more splinters, but those will relatively be worth less. I always like the example of whenever essence is not on the map device, essences are actually more lucrative than if they are, because it's more in your face, everybody's using it. In general though, quality of life change is always appreciated. After that, we have a very nice one. If you're spamming sockets or you're spamming links, you can now basically automate that. You do that by holding your shift and holding your left mouse button until you get to maximum sockets. This will not help you get your 5-link. I personally don't really have that problem ever. I usually go from garbage 6-link to 6-link. Never really think about 5 links all that much. But in general, this is a huge time saver and also a huge risk saver. Now, I don't know why this video is that pixelated. It's not me, trust. But this is the biggest change out of everything we've talked about so far. For every trade, Andy, this is the change you have been waiting for. You can now, with one click, transfer all currencies of one type into the trading window. Look at it. It's beautiful. I don't know what to say about this. When I saw this, I'm just... best change ever. You do this by holding down Control and Shift and then left click, apparently. We'll have to see how it goes. We also currently don't know if this will actually work for stash tabs as well, which would be quite nice, but it would kind of interfere with some of the keybinds that we have currently, so we'll know more about that. But in general, just converting into the binds, right? Buying bulk currencies, I mean, it's huge. And last but definitely not least is you don't have to refarm Pantheons on every character anymore. They're now account bound only once per league, kind of like they did with Lab, with the trials. Now, just so people aren't as concerned, there are certain Pantheon powers you might not want on some characters. For example, reduced effective chill on you wouldn't want on a self-chill character. There's also some other niche uses, but you can actually toggle them. They did confirm that, so no worries about that. But that's about it for the first batch of teasers. I'm really excited, especially because they also said they want to pump out a lot of Transfigure gems over the coming leagues, and some of them they didn't have finished for last league, so I'm definitely looking forward to that. Maybe some Ballista Transfigure gems, who knows, one can dream. Especially melee builds need quite a few more. There's almost no red gems whatsoever when it comes to Transfigure gems. But yeah, we'll see in the coming days. I will definitely keep you guys up to date, and since I still don't have a slogan, see you next time.